Welcome, humans, and any celestial body else out there listening. This is Curious Minds, Infinite Answers. I'm your host, Courtney Christine Koskin. This podcast, simply put, is a mix of human curiosity and how, with the help of AI technology, curious minds can get the answers we seek. Let's get mind-bending and plunge deep beneath the surface of our everyday thoughts. Let's begin. Everything we know, every tree, every star, even your own name, was given to us, taught, labeled by someone who came before us. Language is a human invention. We gave names to things, created structure for expressing thought, and developed thousands of unique languages across time and cultures. No other species has invented such complex systems for communication. We've named everything in our world, from galaxies, planets, and anomalies like black holes to grains of sand. And with those names and labels came definitions, meaning, stories. But what were we before the words? What were we before language gave us what some might consider the illusion of understanding? Long before we spoke in sentences, we grunted, pointed, mimed, so we've been told. For nearly 2 million years, our ancestors survived on instinct, gesture, and feeling. Then, around 50,000 to 70,000 years ago, something shifted in Homo sapiens. We began expressing complex language, art, and culture. We began to speak. And not just to warn or to want, but to imagine, to name things unseen, to share what only previously lived in the mind. This period is often called the cognitive revolution. I want to share a couple of the theories as to why this shift happened. Theory number 1, genetic mutation. A mutation in the FOXP2 gene linked to speech and language may have made complex language possible. This gene is crucial in brain areas like the Broca's area, which processes grammar and speech. Theory number 2, social brain hypothesis. As human groups grew larger, more sophisticated communication was needed to maintain social bonds and hierarchy. Language evolved to gossip, plan, warn, and cooperate. And theory number 3, tool use and symbolism. Advances in tool-making and symbolic art like cave paintings suggest rising abstract thought. Language may have developed alongside these. And then moving on to one last theory, it's a little bit of an alternative hypothesis, the psilocybin stoned ape theory, proposed by Terence McKenna. The stoned ape theory suggests that early humans ingested psilocybin mushrooms as they followed herds where dung and mushrooms coexisted. He claimed the effects of psilocybin, which enhanced visual acuity, increased social bonding, and increased neural connectivity, could have catalyzed the leap in consciousness and language. Sure, why not? However, there is no hard scientific evidence proving this theory. It's actually quite speculative and widely regarded as pseudo-scientific by the mainstream academic community. That said, it's often referenced in psychedelic and consciousness studies as a thought-provoking alternative that remains unproven, not discredited entirely. So basically, we're saying there's a chance language was a byproduct of magic mushrooms. You never know. All right, by 3000 BCE, humans were carving thoughts into stone. Language, once breath, became permanent. And with writing came civilization. From grunts to grammar, our voices began shaping the world around us. Because once you name something, it's no longer just an experience. It becomes a concept, a container, a story. And that is where the real power of language begins. Because naming isn't neutral. It's a form of power. To name something is to tame it, to define where it begins and where it ends. In some cultures, there are dozens of words for snow. In others, no word for left or right, only cardinal directions. Your language can change how you see the world, and perhaps, more surprisingly, it can change who you are. Bilinguals often describe feeling like a different person when switching between languages, because language doesn't just describe our reality, it helps construct it. Fun fact, even deaf communities without exposure to a formal sign language will invent their own systems of sign, called home sign, proving that the human mind is naturally driven to communicate symbolically. But what if we peeled it all back? Took away the labels, names, and categories. Took away the definitions we inherited and learned. What's left when we stop calling the sky, sky, and just look up? When we stop saying love and simply feel it? When we forget the word me and sense only presence? Maybe language isn't truth. Maybe it's a translation. A useful one, yes, but always just one version of the story. So let's imagine something impossible together. Just humor me. What if human intelligence had evolved exactly as it has? All the curiosity, all the emotion, all the capacity to invent and connect, but we never created language. No words, no names, just the raw, unfiltered experience of existence. There would be no news anchors narrating the chaos, no advertising jingles competing for your attention, no influencers, no comment sections, no hashtags. There would be no verbal arguments, no rumors passed mouth to ear, no courtroom speeches, no war declarations written on paper or shouted into microphones. Would there still be conflict? Maybe, but without language to stoke division. Without slogans, slurs, or manifestos, would our aggressions soften into instinct, not ideology? Would we be more attuned to body language, to energy, instinct, and feeling? Would peace be easier to maintain when no one can be convinced they are right? When no one is labeled as enemy, other, or less? Without language, would love be simpler or harder to express? Would art become our universal language? Would movement, music, and presence become the truest forms of communication? And in the silence between us, might we finally hear what's been waiting to be felt all along? Presence. The unspoken knowing that we are not separate, that beneath every thought, every title, every noise, there is a shared pulse. A quiet truth that doesn't need a name, only awareness. The truth that we belong to one another, that we belong to this moment. And maybe that's all we were ever trying to say. I invite you to try something. Pause. Close your eyes. Let your inner monologue dissolve. Let the labels fall away. Just be. In that wordless, open space, you may begin to understand more than words could ever explain. So, what do we do with all of this? We keep using language, of course. It's already here, and we can't turn back the clock as far as we know at this juncture in life. It's how we connect, how we build, how we learn. But maybe we also learn to notice it, to remember that every word is just a tool, and sometimes not the whole truth. Ram Dass once said that language is like a finger pointing to the moon. It can show you where to look, but when we look at the moon, it's not the moon by name itself, only the identity in which we humans have placed on it. Alan Watts believed that the language we speak, especially the one we grow up with, acts like a filter for how we understand and experience the world. He said words don't just describe things, they influence how we think about those things. For example, in English, we see ourselves as separate from nature. We say, I came into this world. But in other languages or cultures, people say, I came out of this world, like a tree that grows from the earth. That small change in wording leads to a big change in worldview. In short, the words we learn shape our reality. They teach us what to notice, how to think, and even who we believe we are. Watts believed that understanding this can help us question old assumptions and maybe see this short life more clearly. Even my guy Albert Einstein said that when he had big ideas, they didn't start as words. They started as pictures in his mind, as feelings. The words, they came later. And Mooji, a spiritual teacher still with us today, often reminds people, The truth of who you are isn't something you have to explain. It's something you already know, deep inside, if you just get quiet enough to feel it. So maybe every once in a while, we put the words down. We step away from the noise. We sit with what's here without needing to name it. We let a flower be a flower, or better yet, we stop even calling it that. We just notice its shape, its movement, its color, without needing to define it. Next time you look up at the sky on a clear day, try not to call it blue. Just look, just feel, just be with it. You might see something you've never seen before. Because sometimes, the most powerful understanding doesn't come from saying more. It comes from being still and feeling what's always been there, underneath it all, before language, before noise, just you. And the quiet truth you never needed words to know.
But you know, if you talk all the time, you'll never hear what anybody else has to say. And therefore all you'll have to talk about is your own conversation. The same is true for people who think all the time. That means, when I use the word think, talking to yourself, subvocal conversation, the constant chit-chat of symbols and images and talk and words inside your skull. Now, if you do that all the time, you'll find that you've nothing to think about except thinking. And just as you have to stop talking to hear what others have to say, you have to stop thinking to find out what life is about. And the moment you stop thinking, you become into immediate contact with what Korzybski called, so delightfully, the unspeakable world. The most ordinary sights and sounds and smells, the texture of shadows on the floor in front of you. All these things without being named and saying, that's a shadow, that's red, that's brown, that's somebody's foot. When you don't name things any longer, you start seeing them. Because, say, when a person says, I see a leaf, immediately one thinks of a spearhead-shaped thing outlined in black and filled in with flat green. No leaf looks like that. No leaves. Leaves are not green. That's why Lao Tzu said, the 5 colors make a man blind, the 5 tones make a man deaf. Because if you can only see 5 colors, you're blind. And if you can only hear 5 tones in music, you're deaf. You see, if you force sound into 5 tones, you force color into 5 colors, you're blind and deaf. The world of color is infinite, as is the world of sound. And it is only through stopping, fixing conceptions on the world of color and sound that you really begin to hear it and see it. So, let me say again, I'm not talking about the ordering of ordinary everyday life in a reasonable and methodical way as being school teacherish and saying, nice, if you were nice people, that's what you would do. For heaven's sake, don't be nice people. But the thing is that unless you do have that basic framework of a certain kind of order and a certain kind of discipline, the force of liberation will blow the world to pieces. It's too strong a current for the wire.
Thank you for tuning in to Curious Minds, Infinite Answers. I'm Courtney Christine Koskin, and I hope you'll join me for next week's episode as we proceed down the path of curiosity and discovery, uncovering various topics along the way. If you have any comments or want answers to your burning curiosities, drop me a line in the comments below. Until we meet again, find the good in the world, and if you can't find it, be the good.